Welcome back to Man Crossing New Horizons. I'm Day Darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where I don't really know what we're going to talk about today, to be perfectly honest. Recorded some Anarchy earlier today. I would say I'm a little bit, I started getting very annoyed towards the end of whatever episode. I think it's going to be episode 14 or something, which I recorded today, of Anarchy, and I apologise about that in advance, you know, but getting S ranks on all the levels is incredibly frustrating in Reykjavik. Not, you know, the actual Reykjavik, but of course there's one of the worlds that you play in Anarchy's Reykjavik, and it's getting to a point where I'm just like, I'm not sure if I should still be doing this for part of a Let's Play, but maybe we'll see it through to the end, because, you know, sunk cost or something. But anyway, hey there, and right now in Fawnhallow, it's 5:19 PM on Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. Shooting stars, interesting. We'll probably forget about those. I will probably forget about those. Yeah, because I'm getting all the S ranks on Anarchy, at least is what I was going to... I wasn't sure if I was initially going to do that, and then I tried it out for a bit in Tokyo, and I was like, oh, actually, it's incredibly easy to get it in Tokyo now that I've actually played the game a significant amount. And, you know, Tokyo and Paris were both fine. Miami was some of the levels a challenge, but now I got to Reykjavik, and I got to a level which I hated playing. Okay, that was a bit too strong, but it was my least favourite level, I think, playing through the first time, and then now I'm playing through it again and trying to get S rank on it. I'm just like, I want to be done with it. So I ended up getting a little bit salty towards the end of that episode, so I apologise if you're watching that. That's like, okay, but, you know, I mean, the people who watch, I'm not going to be watching Animal Crossing, so they probably won't hear this apology anyway, they'll just hear at the start of the next episode. But yeah, I mean, you know, I guess we should talk about, like, what's going to be following on for Anarchy. I'm not really sure yet, and the whole reason I'm doing the S rank on Anarchy is because I haven't done a thumbnail out, nor have I really... Nor am I super sure what I want to play after Anarchy. Oh, actually, no, never mind. I have a very, very clear idea what I want to play after Anarchy. Actually, completely forgot. This is a game I bought recently. Let me just update my my notepad to make sure I put down the right things. Because that game will come in between. Okay, I was thinking of it. I was like, I'm not sure if I want to play that immediately afterwards or not, but we'll see. Completely forgot I bought that game. That is a game I definitely want to play after visit Harv's Island after Anarchy. So, you know, maybe Anarchy will stop early, I don't know. We'll see how hard it is to get S rank on the other levels. And I am going to try and see it through to the end, but if it ends up being too annoying, then maybe I might skip out the last world or something. But yeah, that's not what I was planning to talk about today. I'm not here to talk about Anarchy because, you know, I haven't finished it yet, so, you know, I can't really talk about it yet as a Let's Play. Sorry, sip of water. You know what I can talk about is this random memory I have from back in primary school or elementary school if you're American. I've no idea why I randomly remembered this memory, but it's a memory where basically I think it was science class. I can't actually remember if it was science class or not, but science class makes most sense to me, where we were all in different tables according to, like, kind of ability, quote. In primary school, that's like before we had sets. It says that each table was matched together with people of a similar level. So, you know, I guess it's just easier for the teacher that way. You know, the teacher will often not have to help anyone on, like, the higher tier. And the higher tier level makes it sound so, like, snobby. That's not what I mean. But, like, when the higher sets table probably don't need as much help, so the teacher can spend more time with the lower sets tables who might need the assistance, etc., etc. It's, like, understandable. And, you know, you in a primary school, you can't really, like, have full-on class sets or whatever. You don't often have enough students or that sort of thing, but at least that's how it happens in the UK. But I have this random memory of two random events which happened in primary school. Different teachers. I think one was definitely year 3. I think the other might have been year 4, year 5. I can't really remember. But one of them is a bad memory, so I guess we'll start with that. And it wasn't even about me. It was about we were all in our different sets or whatever. And then each of the different pairs in sets or triples in each of the sets or something had to paint a different planet in the solar system. We must have been in groups of 3 or something, and I honestly don't record. Because there'd be 9 planets in the solar system at the time, and the sun, so probably each person painted 1, or maybe it was just the top sets, I can't remember. Anyway, because I only remember working with this one other person, so I don't really know off the top of my head. But I remember I was working with this other girl. She's a very nice and sweet girl, actually, from what I recall. She was, like, I don't know if I'm trying to, like, find a TV trope, like high school trope of what she'd fit in like, how am I phrasing this? If she had, like, a TV tropes page, like, what would be, like, the high school trope that she'd fulfill in fact primary school? I don't know, like, a lot of nice girls, like, and a lot of nice people just, like, in the classroom and that sort of thing. But, you know, she was pretty nice. I can't remember I don't really remember much else about her, like, to give her like a personality painting or anything, so I can't really set the scene. I think she was quite short from what I remember, but that's not really like a defining personality trait. But I remember I worked with her and we painted Pluto, which, you know, as you now know, is a dwarf planet and has now sort of been defunct as planet status from our solar system, because we found a planet, we found another dwarf planet larger than Pluto in our solar system or something. And if that's why you were like, why is Pluto no longer a planet? That's why. It's because we found something bigger. Well, it was the sort of thing where like Pluto was really small anyway, but people were just like, it shouldn't have been a planet in the first place or something. But it was like, oh, okay, we're not going to declassify it until we find something bigger, and they found something bigger, and it was like, all right, then there's no point in classifying this as a planet. But I remember we painted Pluto. I don't remember if we did a particularly good job or whatever, but I remember the teacher at the time, I must say, at the time, and even in retrospect, I don't think she was probably the least popular teacher we had in our like primary school career. And it's not like I don't think she was a bad person necessarily. I don't know, she was a very harsh primary school teacher, which is, you know, not the greatest way to appeal to kids. Is I must, like, obviously you had to be, you know, like quite stern with kids sometimes, but I feel like she didn't really nail that balance, and, you know, people just ended up like strongly disliking her, rather than, you know, when you're stern with kids in a way which is better, is people, you know, you have a respect for a teacher. Like, I don't know, my year 6 teacher, she was very good. She, you know, she was not relaxed, but she was like, you know, she could be fun, she could be relaxed in that sort of time, but, you know, she was also stern, so when you did something wrong, you felt like you did something wrong. Rather than it feeling like something vengeful. Anyway, year 3, this teacher, I remember that she was like holding up each of the planets or something that we painted, and, you know, whoever's group it was would come up and really like attach it to the solar system thing we were making on the board or whatever. And I remember that the girl I was working with, she was like talking, she said like she just like randomly said something to me. I can't remember what she said, but in my memory she didn't talk all that much, but to be fair, I suppose she was talking, you know. But, you know, rather than the teachers just being like, hey, I'm not going to say a name, obviously, what's another name I can, like Addie or something? Hey, like Addie, please stop talking while we're doing this presentation thing. And then, you know, and that girl will probably be like, oh, okay, whatever. Or maybe she wouldn't. I forgot what I was going to say. But for some reason, maybe the teacher was having a bad day. She got insanely cross and angry, and I remember she was going up to this girl who we're dubbing Addie for now, being like, why don't you come up here and run this class for me? If you want to talk so much, why don't you talk and, you know, do this whole presentation thing or whatever. And I remember this entire class, the tension in the air was like unbearable. Like, everyone was just like, what on earth just happened? It's one of those things which I remember in my memory for probably not a very good reason. Everyone was just so scared to like say anything or do anything, because the teacher, you know, she got angry before, but this is like, she was properly mad for, you know, yeah, should you be a bit annoyed about, you know, the students being a little bit disrespectful, you know, talking over you when you're trying to address the entire class. Yeah, but you probably shouldn't just, you know, like randomly shout and yell at some year 3, so 7-year-olds. 6 and 7-year-olds. That's a bit much, I would say. But anyway, you know, props to the person I was talking to. You know, she was quite about the thing, but, you know, she obliged. She walked up to the front and did the classroom thing where she, you know, she held up the planet, and, you know, the pair whose it was like, that's ours, and they walked up to them, they were like blue tacked it to the whiteboard. It was so incredibly awkward, so just like everyone was like, everyone just felt bad, apart from maybe the teacher, I don't know, but everyone was like obviously not enjoying the entire situation, and maybe the teacher was just like, oh, okay, you know, maybe I messed up a bit, and was just like, okay, you can sit back down now, after, you know, I feel like she said something very passive aggressive as well, to a student as she sat back down, and the reason I remember is because that student was very sad for the rest of that day, and, you know, it's just, you know, there's good and bad teachers, of course, in one, and I'm not going to say the world of teaching is particularly easy. It's very difficult, of course, you know, especially for primary school, having to manage, you know, like 30 kids, and, you know, secondary school is difficult as well, managing like 30 hormonal teenagers. Very difficult to get everything under control. Like, you want to have a balance of being a respectable authority figure, but also you want to have a fun time and be able to connect on a personal level, so all the students can reach like the pinnacle, I suppose, of academic prowess, or, you know, not even just academically, but like, you know, in life in general. You're building a generation of a future, I suppose. So, you know, good teachers are really appreciated, but, you know, bad teachers really like stick in your mind as well. Anyway, people didn't really like that teacher. I would say I don't think any of the teachers who work for anymore at primary school, which is, you know, maybe they've moved on to bigger and better things or anything like that, from what I recall. My favourite hobby? Yeah, that's probably my favourite hobby. Or video games is also quite a high one, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what happened in that garden. I haven't, as I say, I haven't really spoken to anyone from primary school for about a decade or so. No, that's too long. No, actually, maybe that's right. Maybe it has actually been legit about a decade or so. That's crazy. It's not that crazy, to be perfectly honest. It's pretty reasonable, I think. Mainly because I didn't go to the same school as anyone from primary school, so that kind of made it a bit awkward to keep those connections, especially because my secondary school was in a different town to my primary school. Hello, Amelia. What's up? I forgot what I was gonna say. But anyway, I had a random other memory I have of like you know, a student being called out to the front of class, but for like a good reason, from a different teacher. I believe this was a year 4 teacher. I believe. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember the teachers we had for other years. I think it was. Was it her? Or maybe it was her. No, I think it was her. I think we had 2 teachers during year 4. Or maybe it was year 5. Might have been year 5. This doesn't matter to anyone but me. But we had one teacher who was, she was a bit, you know, temperamental. She had some really good days, and then she often got like really angry at some other days. You know, who knows what you get. And then we had a really nice, like calm, like artistic teacher, who was basically not everyone's favorite teacher necessarily, but like, so I don't think anyone would ever like fault her, and I don't think anyone was like, I didn't like that teacher. I think everyone loved that teacher. She was so nice. She was so calm. She was so like relaxed and, you know, very about creative expression. I think this was with her, but I'm not really sure. It might have been with the other teacher. The other teacher was much more scientific based or whatever. And, you know, her good times were really good. Bad times were also like a little bit frightening for, you know, like a 9 or 10-year-old. But anyway, I just remember because it was she was like a really good friend of mine. I don't know how to describe her. Maybe she was quite sporty. She was a bit of a tomboy, maybe. I don't really remember what happened, but she just, for whatever happened that day, she just had like an absolutely terrible day. You know, I guess I just had like a moment of realization where I've moved on from basically telling my primary school stories, and now I'm telling other people's primary school stories, which they probably don't even remember, which is probably the weirdest part. It's okay. They won't see this. They won't know. But none of these stories are particularly bad. Like, I mean, primary school stories are primary school stories. They're kind of just like, I suppose, more amusing, if anything, to look back on. At least the one of the stories I have. But she had a terrible day for whatever reason. I don't remember. I remember she was like crying in class, and the teacher was like trying to comfort her or whatever. She just had a terrible day. And it was during like a science lesson or whatever. And the general idea of a science lesson is, again, we were split up into our 6 tables, and every single table we had to source a different material. We didn't know why yet, but I remember the 6 different materials we had to source. Like, one table had to find nylon, someone else had to find, another table had to find denim, another table had to find, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like cardboard or something like that, like corrugated cardboard. And then our table, we had to find sponge. Another table had to find paper, and another table had to source a tissue. Or tissue paper, I don't really remember. One of those 2. And I remember all of us were just being like, I don't really know what's going on, don't really know what's going up with that. But I remember I brought in a sponge. I brought on one of those classic, you know, rectangular sponges that you get in like those multi-packs. Like those yellows, they come in blues and pinks or whatever, greens as well sometimes. And then you can get them from like Tesco for like 10p a pop. Maybe, I don't know if that's quite right pricing. Oh, red's here. And I remember my sponge was one that was used because it was the only one which was in, because they all had to be, as it turned out, had to all be like in a square shape or able to be cut into a square or rectangular shape, and everyone else brought in sort of like chunks of sponge, which made it difficult to use, which is fair enough. But I remember it was basically, we got told about the experiment we'll be doing is finding out how strong certain materials are, and what was going to happen was people were going to, or someone was going to rip or attempt to rip all the different materials or whatever, and they'd rank them on from like which ones were the hardest to rip to which ones were the softest. And I remember we all had to make predictions beforehand. This is why I remember this story, is because we all made our predictions, and for whatever reason I, you know, spoilers, got all of them correct. Like I remember talking, because we had the teacher aid as well. not teacher aide, sorry, teaching assistant, that's what TA stands for, at the time as well. And I remember asking her, being like, what is denim? It's like, you find it in like jeans or something, right? And she was like, yeah, you can find it in like clothing things, and like your trousers might be, you know, have denim in them. And I remember just like sort of pulling my trousers, like thinking to myself, how difficult is this to rip? And I remember asking about nylon as well, being like, I have no idea what nylon even is. And then I remember she was like, it was kind of like plastic, you kind of find it in like plastic bags and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I remember sort of deliberating everything. And I remember the order I put it down nylon, denim, cardboard, sponge, paper, tissue paper. Whatever reason, stuck in my brain. But I remember I went back and forth between denim and nylon a really long time, because I was just like, I don't really know. I don't really know each of these. I don't know which one's going to be strong, but I remember settling on nylon and denim. But I remember rubbing it out and rewriting it and rubbing it out and rewriting it over and over and over again. it was wild. But anyway, I remember the teacher was very nice, and, you know, chose that girl who was having a terrible day, being like, hey, do you want to be the person who runs this experiment? And, you know, she still had like tears in her eyes or something. From what I remember, she was still having a really bad day for whatever reason. But, you know, she accepted or whatever. And then, you know, the teacher, again, also really nice, chose one of the kids who, you know, was often seen as more of like a troublemaking kid, you know. But at the time, you know, you'd see him as a troublemaker. But in retrospect, like, say, he was just like someone who, you know, just was like easily bored or something, so needed like stimulus, I suppose, to keep himself entertained and engaged, which is why, you know, he often sort of ended up being a bit of a troublemaker in class. Oh, I forgot we had a bag to give someone. Gold metal spikes. Oh, it's Phoebe's. I feel like we checked it and I just didn't internalise what on earth it was. But yeah, that's what I remember. Anyway, so it was just, you know, that girl having a terrible day, troublemaker. I don't know why I'm telling the story. No one cares about the story. I care about the story. That's why I'm telling it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care about my honestly pointless stories. We're running a science experiment, and for whatever reason, it was like one of the most hype experiments, one of the most hype like primary school classes we ever had. Because I remember like the sort of introduction, the teacher being like, "Oh, why don't we start with tissue paper? That would be quite an easy one to do." I remember like the girl just like getting in hands, everyone was like 3, 2, 1, rip, and then she just went whoosh, just like utterly destroyed it. And you know, we were like 8ish or 9ish or whatever. We just went, "Wow, yeah." It was really exciting for no apparent reason, just as like this girl ripping tissue paper. And I remember like the person who was seen as trouble. I guess I would just call them like troublemaker and girl, bad day girl. And I'm not really sure what to call them. You know, just writing on the board, and it was all like really dramatic, despite the fact, you know, it was just some like 9-year-old girl ripping like different materials in front of the rest of her student peers or whatever. I just remember it being so dramatic in my mind. It was like a sports competition or something like that, and like people were just like, "Oh, what's going to happen?" Oh, I said this is going to happen. You think cardboard's stronger than denim? You're out of your mind, etc., etc., etc. You had to be there, I suppose, for it. And then, you know, she wrapped paper, and it was like, oh, that had a little bit more give than tissue paper, less give, sorry, than tissue paper, didn't it? A bit more resistance. You know, it's like paper was put on top or whatever. And then, you know, like ripped cardboard, and everyone was like, oh, cardboard, you know, that's probably just above tissue paper and paper. But, you know, it was a little bit difficult because I think it was corrugated cardboard or something. I don't really remember off the top of my head. And then got to the sponge or whatever. And for some reason, I remember this about a sponge. Everything else was cut into a square shape, except for the sponge, which was cut into a rectangular shape because it was just a rectangular thing in itself. I just remember the teacher cut off the scrubbing part of it, I suppose. You know, like that green like Brillo pad sort of thing, which is on the back. I don't know what I call it, Brillo pad. Is that even in a UK brand? I don't know. I don't know why that's in my memory. I also remember that's a sponge I brought in. So I was like, check me out. That's my sponge. I sourced it for this experiment. Oh, the things I remember, just like the dumbest things. I forgot. Do we have to customize or craft things? Craft things, okay. And I remember the just incredible upset when you know, it turned out that the sponge was more difficult. No, it was easier to rip than the cardboard. People were just like, "Wow, it's crazy!" Everyone, because everyone's like, "Oh, it's obviously going to go for free paper things when it's going to be all the other materials." But it turns out sponge not pretty difficult, pretty easy to rip into, as we all found out. And everyone's going like, "Wow!" And, you know, the betting is all in shambles. Well, not betting, but you know, it's all everything's in shambles. People are no idea what's going on. Everything's so unpredictable. And I remember we got to the nylon and denim bar, and this is where it all kicks off, because I remember everyone thought that denim, or most people thought that denim would be the strongest, but the nylon, which someone brought in, which for some reason I feel like I still remember the girl who brought in the nylon. Why do I remember that? Actually, that means it has to be year 3, surely. Maybe it was year 2. No, it was year 4 probably. Was that girl still there in year 4? Oh yeah, I think she left in year 5 maybe. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so it could have been year 5 or no, probably year 4 then. Freshwater goby, catch bugs. I guess we'll catch bugs. What bug is that? I didn't even pay attention to that one. Probably dung beetle. Okay, that's going to be a bit... I mean, actually, no, that's a purple. That's quite easy. Everyone thought it was going to be denim was the toughest one to rip. So we got to the nylon bag and we started ripping things. If you don't know, and if you're wondering what sort of nylon was brought in, it was one of those blue nylon bags which you get, you know, like IKEA bags or something, or like an interwoven one, which probably added to the fact of why it was so difficult to rip in the first place. Because I remember we were just like 3, 2, 1, rip, and then the girl had just up front, you know, bad day girl. She was just ripping and she was like, I mean, it just like didn't tear at all. It didn't budge in the slightest. And she like tried it again, tried it again, and it's just like it wasn't budging in the slightest. I remember it just was an absolutely hilarious moment. Everyone was just sort of laughing, just being not like everyone was laughing like with her. Like she was laughing as well, being like, I can't believe how difficult this is to rip, because everyone thought it'd be. It's like it's just a plastic bag. How easy? How hard could it be to rip? But then, you know, turns out that plastic bag, when you interweave all of the different things together, pretty difficult to rip into. I remember she got like red in her face trying to rip it, and then the teacher was like, "Oh, why don't you troublemaker boy try and rip it as well?" And he tried it as well, and he couldn't rip it either. No, and it was just like, "Whoa, it's so difficult." And then teacher, good save. Why don't we come back to that one? And then we did denim. And then, you know, the girl ripped denim. You know, it put in significant. She put in a lot of effort, to be fair, but she actually got through and ripped it through to the end. So I just had another moment of realization where I was just like, why am I telling this story? But I don't know. What other points of his memories have had not to be shared and, you know, remembered? And then I just remember everyone going back to like have a go at trying to rip the nylon, and just literally no one could rip it. Like the only thing people could get done is like they strapped your fibres in it and got like a rip about like a quarter of the way through or something. I remember talking to the girl who brought in the nylon, and afterwards, and, you know, she, you know, not boasting so much, but she was just like, look at how tough a thing I brought in was, you know, the way that kids do, you know, attribute like false achievements to things which don't really matter, you know. And then case in point, me being like, oh, I'm the one who brought in the sponge, which was used, the chosen sponge. You know, she was like, look at the incredibly tough nylon bag I brought in, and how difficult it was to rip in the first place. Anyway, the guy who was having a bad day definitely brightened and cheered up after that, and I'm sure the troublemaker, you know, because it's a thing, you know, in primary school, you know, I don't blame the teachers for doing it, but like, there's often the well-behaved kids who get picked on and chosen. What are you doing in media? Who get picked and chosen to do like the important quote responsibilities, important for a kid, sometimes responsibilities, because, you know, the teacher trusts them to be responsible or whatever. So I remember that is a thing which often happens. Oh man, I just had another memory. And we got time. I'll tell that memory afterwards. I guess this entire thing's going to be in front of a class. The title for this episode, I mean. Yeah, but you know, that's just a lesson of a really good teacher, you know, who saw, you know, a troublemaking student who often didn't get picked with these sort of things because, you know, teachers didn't trust him for whatever reason. But despite the fact he was a genuinely good kid, I thought. He just, you know, the normal way that classes work, just like academia, like didn't stimulate him, like didn't teach him the right way. Everyone learns differently. You might be like, what happened to him? I think he joined the Air Force or something, so I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. Like, I just have a memory of like seeing years ago of him like in like a military garb or something. Whether he's actually in the military or not, I can't say, but you know, maybe. Anyway, and you know, that other girl just having a terrible day, just, you know, having a strong highlight where, you know, all the kids always like to feel like we're important and do like an important role or something. So even if it's something as silly as just being like, oh, I'm the one to, you know, lead this experiment, I'm the one that I'm going to be the one to rip things, you know, made her day. So good on you, Miss H. Not going to say your name, obviously. Yeah, you brought a smile to those two students' face, and honestly, the entire class. Anyway, well, one other, I suppose, short story in front of a class, I suppose, is we used to play this game. This was in year 4, I think. I think, was it year 4? I can't really remember. Sorry, I'm having a sip of water. It might have been year 6. We might have played a year 4 and in year 6. I think we had the same teacher in year 4 and year 6 now I think about it. Or maybe not, I don't really remember. No, we can't have. No, our year 6 teacher was the old year 4 teacher. That's why I got those wires crossed on my brain. Yeah, we used to play this game called Maths Gladiators, which is basically the entire, you know, it was always a 1v1 duel where, you know, you go up to the front whiteboard. The teacher had written like a load of different like numbers and stuff on the whiteboard, including like fractions and decimals or whatever, and then you'd stand back to back with your opponent, both of you holding these like plastic swords, and then you look at the teacher, and the teacher would say like a maths equation or something, and she'd be like, what is, and probably not 12 squared, that might be a bit difficult, what is 4 times 3? And you know, the answer is 12, and what you had to do is you had to whip around, look at the board, and grab your sword and like stab the correct answer as fast as possible. And if you don't know, I, especially back in the day, I was incredibly good at maths, including mental maths. I was very fast for whatever reason. So I remember I was utterly dominant throughout the entire thing of doing, of playing Maths Gladiator. But every time, you know, it was time for me to go. Because you take turns, you know. The first time I did it, people were just like, well, of course, you know. And I suppose if I was to have like a TV tropes page, mine would definitely be like the smart kid or whatever. Trying to come up with something to do. Maybe enough time. Unfortunately, we would have got about 3 minutes or something. It was just like, oh, dear darlings, up the reigning champion of Maths Gladiator or whatever we called it. And then, you know, I remember one time, like the second time we did it or something. And maybe the first time we did it. Hello, what's this conversation going on? You're both very happy, though. I would talk to you, but, you know, I'm not going to be there to ruin your mood. Anyway. I forgot what I was going to say. I had like an undefeated streak when the first time we played it. Like I went like undefeated like 15 times in a row or something. And then I remember I got challenged. Like they actually ran out of people. Maybe not 15. I guess it had to be the entire class. No, I think we were split into 2 different teams. That's why. And there's like a running tally or whatever. And I remember I got challenged. Like the next person up to challenge was the girl. Amusingly, the girl who brought in the nylon bag. She was like the second smartest one or something in our class, from what I remember. And I only remember this because I remember like she beat me once in a maths class, and in a maths test, and I remember being like, oh cool. I mean, apparently I learned later that she from like she told her mum and her mum told my mum in a conversation where it was like she was so ecstatic that she managed to beat me in a maths examination. I was like, oh, you know, at the time I didn't really get it. I was like, okay. But of course now looking back, I'm like, oh, you know, fair enough. Good on you. Anyway, I remember I got challenged by her, but I remember I beat her, and then like their entire side was like, you know, obviously, you know, she's this nylon bag girl is a best hope of, you know, in taking down dear darling reigning champion of Maths Gladiators. So we're just like, oh, you know, stay up there, go again. So, you know, we fought 2 more times, and I won two more times again. And then I remember the teacher, very honest about this, from what I recall, saying an answer which that other girl pointed to last time or something like that. I can't remember. Basically, an answer which that girl knew exactly where it was the entire time because it was like right next to her or right in front of her or something. And then she managed to defeat me in the entire class. I went, wow, oh my god. You know, as kids do, because it's the most dramatic thing that's probably happened that day. And I remember, for whatever reason, I remember the teacher being very transparent about it, being with me and being like, sorry dear darling, you know. It's like, we got to let other people have a turn, otherwise, you know, otherwise you'd be there, up there forever or something. So she purposely said a question which, like, I would immediately lose to, or something. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I remember, you know, at the time, like, not really getting it. I'm sure I was a little bit salty about it, being like, I want to stay up there forever because I was a reigning champion. But looking back in retrospect, respect to that teacher for being very, like, transparent and open about it, you know, being like, okay, well, I want everyone else to, you know, have a turn, but obviously I can't just be like, oh, just, you know, get, you're not allowed up there anymore, dear darling. You know, she did it in a much more subtle way. So, you know, both... so the other girl could like sort of revel in her victory, and then, you know, she was very transparent and explained to me as well why that happened, why she did it in the first place. And so everyone can have a go. And honestly, respect to you, teacher. Respect to you. I mean, she was the teacher I think like everyone like loved. Unless it was a different teacher off the top of my head, but I don't think it was. I think it was this teacher, which everyone really liked. Yeah. Anyway, of course I always have more like primary, so I actually thought I'd like have another story, but I don't have time to tell that now because we've only got 10 seconds, so there you go. There's 3 stories from primary school when, you know, people had to go in front of the entire class. You know, one bad, one good, and one very exciting one, I suppose, or maybe not. I don't know. If you're still here, then, you know, I don't know. I suppose I kind of feel like a grandma, sort of like telling my grandchildren random stories. But anyway, I'm going to round off this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Any likes, comments, subscription, shares, I greatly appreciated. Join my Dear Darling Discord. Follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.